Hi, and welcome to this video, and today we're going to be going over a continuous LED light source called the Godox SL100W. And I thought this would be interesting to go through. I practice photography, and I'm usually working with flash photography. And given the fact that many photographers are now mixing videography with photography and involved in videography more often, I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at a continuous light source. And so I chose the Godox SL100W to take a look at. And before we get into its use and kind of some of the findings that I found in its use, I just wanted to give an overview of the light source itself. So what comes in the box with the continuous light source itself is a power cord that's roughly 16 feet long. Comes with this LED light source protector that you put onto the Bowens mount. Comes with a light reflector that looks to be about 7 inches, a remote control, a warranty card, and an instruction manual. I'll come back to those in a second. But over on the light source itself, anyone familiar with studio strobes, this has a very familiar look to it. It's got a grab handle on the back. Looks to be, and what I've found in its use is it's pretty sturdy, sturdily built. On the front here, you have a really large LED light source, and it does put out a lot of light. You got some cooling fins here. There is a fan built in, and so I'll turn it on in a second. But there isn't much sound coming from that. And then you have a Bowens mount here, and which is really great for a continuous light source. A lot of people use light panels, and it's a little bit of a challenge sometimes to modify that light. Whereas in comparison to something like this that has a Bowens mount, where you have thousands of options that readily fit that Bowens mount to modify the light and adjust shadows, hardness, softness of light, etc. So whether it be a softbox, a octabox, a beauty dish, you name it, it's available on a Bowens mount. And so I'll just go ahead and put this reflector on here right now. Easy enough. Just slides on, twists, locks in place, and then to take it out is the release handle here, and then you just take it right off. So, like I said, anyone who's worked in studio strobes on a Bowens mount, that's very familiar to you. On the back here is a control panel, so you have the power switch. It comes in whatever power setting it was last used in, so it came on in 100% there. It does have an antenna here. It's got the dial here to change the settings, and it has a button here to change the channel of the group that is used in conjunction with the dial, and then a physical power switch. And on the display panel, it shows the channel, the group, the percentage of power. It goes from 10% to 100%. And then the temperature that the light source is currently reading at. So right now it's at 27 degrees Celsius. So I'll take us to the remote control now. This has a power setting, so turning it on. It also automatically adjusts it to whatever the last power setting was, so this was at 100%. So you'll notice that that's one of my nits on this. Is that the remote control communicates to the light source, but the light source doesn't communicate back to the remote control. So right now my remote control is 100%. If I take this and put it down to 50%, because I happen to be near the continuous light source, or I asked an assistant to go ahead and adjust that because maybe I'm out of range or something with the remote, or I just can't find it. And let's say it's at 50%. Now let's say I find the remote, or I come into range and I want to adjust the power up or down from that 50%. Well, the last setting this was at was 100%. So if I hit plus or minus, let's hit minus here, it jumps to what it was at on the remote, which was 100%, and then -1, so now it reads 99%. So again, I wish it had the two-way communication where if I adjusted the settings on here, it would show on this remote, but unfortunately that doesn't happen. But just continuing on the remote, you have the power switch, you have the channel and group button, you have a set button, and then you have a minus and a plus sign. So it's really adjusting at 1 percentage point at a time. If you do hold down the button, it does start to auto increment. So right now my continuous light's at 33%. I'm going to press that button. Sorry, my remote was at 100%, so it jumped right back up there. So I'm going to press it. It's going to go first to 99%. Now it starts decrementing, and I'll stop when I get to 50, and it's at 50%. So you can get some fairly quick adjustments with this, but it's not as quick as using the manual dial. It's also got a temperature reading on here for the light source, which is 5600 Kelvin, which is what this light source is rated at. I'm actually not sure why it reads that, because I can actually adjust it on here, but it does not adjust the color temperature of the light source itself. I have tried that and tested that, and it didn't do anything for me. So if anyone knows exactly what that's supposed to do, let me know. But I imagine it may be having to do with, there's actually two models. There's a 100W, which is the white, which is at 5600 Kelvin, and then there's a yellow version, 100Y, which is balanced at 3300 Kelvin. So so anyway, that was just an oddity with the remote. By the way, this is the Godox RC-A5, and it does take 2 AAA batteries. And it does give a readout in the remote, basically 3 bars that tell you how much battery you have left. So I'm going to turn that off. Now one thing, if you turn it off with the remote, you'll see the output panel does read off, and the fan actually stays on to help with that cooling. And so then when you turn off the main power switch, everything turns off, including the fan. And I have left it sitting there, in just the remote off mode for a very long time, probably an hour or so, and I noticed that the fan never turned off. So so just be aware of that. You do want to really come back and turn off the main power switch at some point. The manual is pretty basic. It's got looks like some other languages in here. It's got a forward page. It does describe that there's 2 versions for your safety, and it has the standard picture of the continuous light source and the remote, and tells you about all the different pieces and buttons and dials and things. Then it tells you what came in the package. Half a page of operation here for the main control panel, and then another page of operation instructions for the remote control, and then it has technical data. So I'm just going to read through that real quick. AC power is 100 to 240 volts, so I believe that means that as long as you have the adapter for for the wall, that you should be able to use this just about anywhere, since it provides both 100 and 240 volt compatibility. 16 groups, 16 channels, 6 groups, A, B, C, D, and F. Max power is 100 watts. Color temperature is 5600 Kelvin, plus or minus 300 Kelvin. The yellow version is 3300, plus or minus 300. 100% luminance or lux is 2400 at 1 meter. 100% luminous flux is 13,000. Color rendering index is 90 to 92. R9 is 50 to 60. Light brightness range is 10 to 100%. Operation temperature -10 to 50 degrees Celsius. Safe temperature is less than or equal to 70 Celsius. Dimensions 34 by 23 by 13, not including the lamp cover. And then the net weight is 2.41 kilograms. This thing puts out a lot of light, but going through this process of getting familiar with this continuous light, kind of comparing it against my flashes, does give me a new appreciation for what these things can really do. This is the Cheetah CL360. and it's rated, which is a rebranded Godox, by the way, and it's rated at roughly 300 watt seconds. And you know, just in comparing the two, this thing puts out a tremendous amount of power. I mean, this thing's bright. This thing just, you know, is incredible. And you know, obviously, you can buy larger flashes that, you know, 600 watt seconds, etc., that are much more powerful than this. So, but to compare it against this, I wanted to get a sense for, you know, comparing light sources. So I did a little bit of an experiment where I set these two up using a similar reflector with a grid on each, and took some photos of them equidistant from a gray background. And I was running at ISO 200, f6.3, and 1/60th of a second. And what I found is, you know, from an equivalency standpoint, with those settings at least, this was set at 100%. This was set at 1/64th power to get roughly equivalent light output, you know, that gives, you know, there's a lot more power available at your fingertips with this, you know, for photography, because that left me with 6 stops of flexibility, you know, if I needed it from this flash when this continuous light was maxed out. So, like I said, it gave me a new appreciation for this thing. Now, you know, is that a fair comparison? Because this is continuous, this is instantaneous. You know, you may, this whole video is based on you know, when you would choose one versus the other, and having both in your kit and being able to choose there. So so you know, a couple of things about the flash. These go off, you know, at least this model, anywhere from that all the light comes at once, either anywhere from 1/300th of a second to 1/10,000th of a second. So the other thing that a flash does is it really freezes action. So really, your shutter speed, and this won't be new to photographers, but your shutter speed becomes somewhat irrelevant. You control your ambient light with your shutter speed, and you control your you know, the light in your scene, you know, that's flash driven by the power of your flash and your aperture, so that lets you, you know, easily control both aspects separately, ambient light and your flash power. Whereas your continuous light acts much more like ambient light, in that it's you know, not all coming out at once. It's light that's stacking in a continuous form. And so, you know, I had set my test at 1/60th of a second, but if I had put it at 1/30th of a second, then I would have received the exact same amount of light from this flash, but I would have received twice the amount of light from this continuous light. And so, so you treat it a lot more like ambient light, even though you can control the output and you can control the direction and everything like that. So it's, you know, so it is a controlled light source, but it acts very similar to ambient light. So, you know, really you're looking at it for different use cases than you are your flash. But if you want maximum light output and flexibility, because you're taking photographs, really can't really beat a flash. With that said, like I said at the beginning of this video, a lot of people are mixing photography and video. And also, if you're at an event where you don't want to disrupt you know, any of the activity at the event, or you know, cause focus to take away from the event, you know, flashes popping can actually be a little bit distracting at times. Whereas a continuous light source, even though, you know, it might be very noticeable when you first turn it on, if you turn it on before the event, really, you know, similar to the iris or the aperture auto adjusting on my video camera when I turn this light on, you know, people's iris you know, adjusts, and they get used to, you know, regardless of whether you have, you know, a single one of these at 10% or 10 of these at 100%, people's eyes tend to be able to compensate over time. So, so during that event, you'll be less disruptive if you're lighting it with a continuous light source. So, so I found all that interesting, kind of playing with that and learning, because I hadn't used continuous light sources a lot, learning how to think of it differently than true flash photography. So I recommend anyone who hasn't played around with a continuous light to do so, because it does kind of help move forward your thinking in the use of light. So would I recommend this? I think that last statement kind of indicates that I would. This is, at the time of this video, this is running, roughly $250, anywhere to $300 on the street. So it's relatively cheap and provides a lot of flexibility, especially if you're doing video work. And like I said, it's pretty rugged. So I would recommend it just to get one, play around, this or another continuous light. For most of my photography work, I'm gonna, just because of the power output and the flexibility, if I'm just doing stills, I'm gonna stick with my flashes. But if I am mixing video in, I'm gonna start to make use of continuous light now. So anyway, hope you found this interesting, and I should have put this caveat at the beginning, but I am not a videographer, so I'm sorry if I missed any important information related to the use of continuous light. But if I did miss something and you want me to cover it or answer any questions, please put those in the comments section. And I hope you did find this useful, and come back and take a look for future videos. Thanks a lot.